But right here, buddy, that's a tattoo.
Wow, that's David Dunham.
Fact or fiction?
Eric Dungey had no chance away. Flips it to Watkins again.
This is the Nachos and Analysis College Football Show, presented by Pump Monkey Septic Services.
Welcome to Season 2, Episode 9 of the Nachos and Analysis College Football Show. Today is Thursday, October 19th, and the Tigers come off a bye preparing for a trip down to Miami. I'm your host, Drew Archer, and I'm joined by my co-host, Matthew Johnson. How's it going, Matthew?
It's really good, actually. It was a very stress-free weekend, which was very nice, and just got to sit back and watch football and enjoy it all, not have to get a heart attack at any point.
Yeah, that was it's always a bummer when Clemson doesn't play, but it's also really, really nice to be able to watch football and not have to worry about it. So I too enjoyed that. So obviously Clemson had a bye week this past week. A little bit of what we're going to get into today. We're going to talk about some notable topics from this week, as well as notable games that happened in Week 7. We're going to discuss our Twitter poll. Here's an early reminder. If you don't follow us on Twitter, do so. At Nachos_analysis. This week's poll was, what will Clemson's record be the second half of the season? And this was a close vote here. Then no guest today. I completely dropped the ball. I feel like I've said this multiple times this season, so people just probably think that I'm unreliable. But I was supposed to reach back out to Ryan Cantor with a date to come on the show, which was supposed to be today, and I never reached out to him. I realized today. So,
well, let's just put
Ryan,
it out
I know you're a
publicly
listener.
right now, Ryan.
Yeah.
You're invited on the show next week. If Drew doesn't reach out
Yes.
to you by Friday or Saturday, then DM us.
Yeah. Sorry about that, Ryan. And then, so no guest this week, but then, of course, we'll do our fact or fiction. We'll review our picks from last week and give out our picks this week before we wrap up the show and preview the Miami game. No guest, but a lot to talk about. I did want to throw this out here, Matthew. We didn't really address it in last week's episode, but I did the interview with Larry Williams solo. Did you get a chance to listen to that interview?
Yeah, I did. Well, I edited that podcast, so I did listen to it, but
True.
but yes, I did listen to it. I thought it was a really good time. Larry loves to talk. He's got the Dabo in him.
Yes. I had way more questions than we had time for, and I throw out one question, and we use a lot of times when we do the interviews, we'll do Zoom, and Nachos Analysis, not a big money maker here, so we do not have the paid version of Zoom. And I asked him one question with 10 minutes left of our recording, and that time keeps dwindling down. I'm like, all right, Larry, let's wrap it up. Come on. I was worried that I believe it was Clemson Tom last season where that happened. It just cut off in the middle of our interview, and we had to start a whole nother Zoom. But great interview with Larry. Appreciate him coming on. Wasn't able to cover a lot of the conference realignment discussion that I wanted to, with Larry being as plugged in as he is. Didn't want to risk any sources or saying something he shouldn't. So just know he's a man in the know, and if you don't subscribe to Tiger Illustrated, a lot of times you're not going to get that information. So, but it was a bye week for Clemson.
Well, speaking of, sorry to cut you off, but speaking of the conference realignment talk in Larry Williams, is you had a little mishap that a lot of people called you out for. I don't know if you got on Twitter on October the 10th, last Tuesday. A lot of people were going back to your Big Ten announcement tweet, like the rumor, and calling you out and being like, well, where is it?
Yeah, and I like everybody that called me out. I made sure to remind them that the first word of the original tweet was rumor. I was just going off a rumor I read on a message board. The whole post in general was to get a rile out of people, and I can't remember how many bookmarks it got. A lot of people bookmarked it and returned on October 10th to let me know that I was wrong, which I wasn't really expecting to be right, honestly. I just wanted to get some interaction. So
Hey, that tweet pops off, so it worked.
it did. Any thoughts on this weekend? We had some headlines. Dabo's making comments about fans. Shane Beamer breaks his foot. Any comments?
Well, I just to go ahead and read out for the listeners, what Dabo or what Drew is referring to about Dabo, is he says, "I love our fans. I think we got again 98.5% of them are amazing, but the other 1.5% they create a lot of problems. They're part of the problem, not part of the solution."
What do you make of that? I mean, obviously, there's a lot more he said before and after that, but I have a differing opinion of Dabo. I think as much as Dabo talks, which granted he's asked questions, but we all know how long-winded he can get. He says a lot that brings a lot of attention to himself, and I kind of disagree with him here. That I don't know, some of the things you say to the media, and then you put on a performance like you did prior to this bye week, and it doesn't look like best is the standard.
Yeah, I did hear one thing that I saw Dabo say. It might have been from the same call-in show, but he said, best like best is the standard means like giving your individual best, like it's an individual uh slogan, I guess is the word. But
Mm-hmm.
so it's saying like every player on their roster giving their best at all time is the standard, which kind of gives a little more leeway, as not saying that Clemson being the best program in the country is the standard, or like our team being the best is the standard. Uh, so that gives a little more perspective on it, but I think if you're going to say best is the standard, you can't put an asterisk next to it.
Yeah, no, I agree. Um, it's a great slogan when you're going 15-0 and winning national championships, and um, not the best whenever you're struggling out there on the football field. Um, Josh from Late Kick posted a quote from his show this past week. He said, I think he is too prideful to come off his stances like the one he has on the portal, and I think it's going to cost him." Josh had a whole episode, a whole segment, I believe, on Dabo and Shane Beamer, and he kind of went in on Dabo with the transfer portal. I don't know. I agree that Clemson needs to go to the transfer portal. I think this is the year that we see um, the Tigers hit it, but I don't know.
Yeah.
Thoughts on that?
We might just be 2 or 3 years too late getting started in the transfer portal. But I know we've already mentioned Ryan in this episode, but Ryan Cantor talks a lot about the transfer portal and Clemson's lack of utilizing it. So it's good information if you look through his tweets and see some of the replies coming back to him. I think Jason Priester was even in his replies recently talking about how
Mm-hmm.
Clemson was in the ear of a transfer portal offensive guard or tackle this past offseason, and that was like the furthest we'd made it with a transfer recruit at this point, but he just ended up not deciding on us, and it was pretty much Jason's point was pretty much just saying like we have been looking, we just haven't gotten to a point of recruiting transfer portal guys to where like it's public knowledge and like we're broadcasting it. It's like Clemson is working behind the scenes on getting portal guys, but I mean, I guess it's up to fans can have their own opinion on whether or not it's enough or not. So
Yeah. I think where Clemson is going to struggle when they this offseason go looking for guys in the portal to fill some roles where you have some deficiencies at is Clemson has not used NIL to recruit players like a lot of these other programs have. And I feel like the guys that are in the portal are looking for that NIL money in that recruiting pitch, trying to get them there. So that also might be something that Dabo and the staff has to look at, but it's not something that we've seen out of them yet.
yeah, and maybe for most of the guys or a majority of the guys in the portal would be like that, but I wouldn't say that's a statement that would go under every player in the portal that's looking for an NIL deal or opportunity. Like it could have just been that their school gave that NIL deal to an incoming recruit. They're looking for a spot to actually play football. So it's pretty nuanced, and recruiting is not, I don't really know very much about it. I'm sure it's very difficult to get a read on people like this. Like when you're trying to sell them on something, like a big life decision, I can't even imagine.
Yeah. Yeah. To the other program in the state of South Carolina, University of South Carolina this week, a heartbreaking loss for the Gamecocks. Heat of the moment. Apparently, Shane Beamer kicks a Gatorade cooler, breaks his foot. I guess it appears he will be on the injury list heading into this matchup with Mizzou this week.
Yeah, I just saw this. I guess this story came out yesterday or Monday. Maybe Shane had like his in-person press conference.
He was excited. He was excited to talk about it too.
Really?
When it was brought up, I didn't hear what the reporter asked. I don't know if he was wearing a boot or limping or something. But as the question's being asked, you can see him smiling, and he's all excited. I got so angry, I broke my foot, kicked something.
I mean, I don't think it's a great look. I know it's easy to turn it into like he's really passionate about his team and got fired up, but I don't think like an outburst like that is going to get your team behind you any more than they already are. Like I can think of in my entire football career, like 1 or 2 times that a coach did this, and it was like it wasn't productive.
No, not at all. I think I seem to recall a intense moment with Coach Steele when he was at Clemson. He got so worked up he passed out on the sideline. That might have a little bit more effect than kicking something in anger, but definitely it seems like Shane Beamer, for different comments and just various things over the last couple of weeks, has put his foot in his mouth, and I don't know. He's been getting a lot of attention. I can't remember what exactly it was last week. He made some kind of comment, and then it was apparently brought up that he drives a Lamborghini to work every day, and someone snapped a picture of a Lamborghini in his parking space. Whether it's his or not, I'm not really sure. But I don't know. I feel like the losses that are accumulating in Columbia and just some of these just random things with Shane Beamer coming out are not helping his case, because right now he's got very similar numbers to Will Muschamp, and we all know where Will Muschamp is not the head coach at anymore.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Like you said, he has put his foot in his mouth a couple times the last few weeks, and I feel like he's just maybe gets caught at bad moments, because I don't think Shane Beamer's a bad guy. Like I think he's a good guy and with good intentions, and he's just in a bad situation right now. Maybe too inexperienced to be at like a P5 program, but I'm not gonna like make any claims like that. I'm just throwing out theories. But
No, I mean, I like Shane Beamer too. I think he's a good dude. I think that's why there's a little bit more grace with him at Carolina, because, like I mentioned, he's in a very similar spot to Muschamp through the same amount of time, and the conversations were very different about Muschamp versus Beamer right now. I think he's a much more likable guy, but Gamecock fans are getting a little bit of a taste of what it's like to have a head coach that says things that just get, whether they're taken out of context or blown up on social media. Because I think it was Clemson Tom that quote retweeted this the other day, talking about how someone sneezes and Dabo says "bless you," and then there's this week-long conversation about Dabo and religious views and all this stuff that just get overblown and out of proportion. So I think Carolina fans are getting a little taste of that right now.
yeah, that's actually a good point, because it is a very good parallel where Dabo, I think, is also a good guy with good intentions, but when you put him in front of a camera with a bunch of microphones and make him talk for 30 minutes to an hour, he might slip up and say something stupid that rubs people the wrong way. And I think that's where Shane Beamer is at right now. I don't think it's necessarily, I mean, I'm sure there's stuff they can improve within the program, but at least this conversation is more about media training. Like, and being like ready and composed enough to answer questions from a media member instead of like giving a emotional response.
Yeah. All right, let's transition to some of the games that actually happened last week and stop talking about coaches. I took Colorado minus the points. What was it? Friday night last week,
Mm-hmm.
and I went to bed. It was at halftime. It was 29-0. I was like, I don't need to watch this game anymore. And I wake up to an ESPN notification on my phone the next morning that they lost, blew a 29-point lead in double overtime.
Yeah, I don't know if you saw it. There's one play in particular towards the end of the game where Stanford might have taken the lead or tied it up with this touchdown, but it was against, they threw kind of like a one-on-one ball to one of their receivers. I don't know his name for Stanford, but he was being covered by Travis Hunter. And it was one of those catches where he like kind of reaches over the back of the defensive back and catches it behind him. And like, that's just pretty heartbreaking to see from such a good athlete.
Yeah.
Like, it sucks when
Yeah.
it's like, that would be like Michael Jordan getting dunked on and you have to like sit there and watch it. Maybe not exactly like that. Maybe Travis Hunter isn't Michael Jordan.
Great athlete, though. I remember showing that clip to Emily the next morning. I'm like, that is absolutely an insane catch. And
then he just walks into the end zone.
Yeah. And this wild ride that Colorado's been on, they're getting so much hype. Won a big game to open the season against TCU. Now you have to start wondering, based on their remaining schedule, will Colorado even be bowl eligible? They were looking like world beaters early in the season, and they gotta figure it out.
Yeah, I think they're the type of team though that can hang in any game. It's really just that Oregon game that they really got stifled, and I think it's that just chalks it down to Oregon's talent on the defensive line and in that front seven. But I think Colorado can hang in at least most games. It really sucks what happened here, but they're a young program, so I feel like they'll be able to learn from this and finish games more strongly than obviously leading 29-0 at halftime and losing in double overtime is not something anybody wants to do.
No. And yeah, I agree. I don't think we're going to see another game like the Oregon Colorado game. I agree with you. I think they're more than capable of hanging in a game or coming from behind like we saw against USC a couple weeks ago. But on that topic, Oregon Washington, the biggest game of the weekend. I threw this out there on Twitter. Oregon absolutely ruined the perfect opportunity for maybe the best uniform game, with the purple and gold for Washington and the green and yellow of Oregon. And Oregon wears these white uniforms that look like they rode a bicycle through a mud puddle that slung mud up their back or whatever. But regardless, it was a great game. Did you get a chance to watch that one?
Yeah, I did watch most of it. I can't remember off the top of my head any like significant moments from it, but it was a close game, and that's one that I had on my picks from last week that I took Oregon on and was a little upset about losing that one, but it was a great game and good for college football to be focused. I feel like this past week was very focused, at least my football watching in the Pac-12, and like the games I watched mostly was that Colorado Stanford game on Friday, Oregon Washington, and then USC Notre Dame. Like there's a lot of big Pac-12 competition this week.
Yeah, it's really a shame that the final year of what we've known as the Pac-12 has been one of the best seasons that we've seen in a long time. There's a lot of really good teams, a lot of really good quarterbacks in the Pac-12.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was an instant classic. Then you have USC and Notre Dame. Notre Dame is a opponent coming to Clemson, South Carolina here in a couple weeks. They kind of turned it around a little bit after having some tighter games. The loss a couple weeks ago, and kind of shut USC down.
Yeah, I was really surprised. I didn't watch this one that much, but I was keeping up with the score and saw Notre Dame get out to a really big early lead, and it's pretty surprising and honestly scary. I'm not looking forward to that game when Clemson has to play them, because if they're shutting down Caleb Williams for even a half of football, just think of what they're going to do to our poor offense.
Yeah. Just looking ahead a little bit, I think that Notre Dame game is like every game between these two programs since they've halfway joined the ACC. The home field advantage has really mattered in each of those games. You have the one exception when they played each other in the playoff, but I'm looking forward to getting Notre Dame back at home in Clemson again this year. So, the fans and the crowd will be raucous for that. Into the ACC, I was telling Matthew, I saw the line for this game. I think Louisville was favored by 7 and was completely shocked by that and instantly just went in my account on that bet and then text in our group message with Matthew and our uncles. And I was like, how is this line at 7? And then your dad just proceeds to list off like 6 reasons why he thinks Pitt might win the game. And then Pitt turns around and wins that game. I was not expecting that.
Yeah, this is another one I didn't get to watch that much. I did watch a lot of football this weekend, but just not necessarily this game. But really surprising from Pitt. The bottom of the ACC is really arguing to not be the bottom. And I feel like we saw that. I think this past weekend we saw Virginia Tech beat Wake Forest, which Virginia Tech is one of those teams we thought might be the bottom of the conference this year. So pretty interesting how the conference is shaping up.
Yeah, between the ACC and the Pac-12, you could make the argument there's been a lot of improvement in those lower tier to middle of the road teams. That's really elevated the quality of the conference. So, making it harder on these teams like Clemson, Florida State, and North Carolina for maybe wanting to leave. Who knows?
Yeah, and while that happens, I'm going to go ahead and step out and go to the bathroom if you want to move on to the next segment.
Next segment brought to you by Pump Monkey Septic Service. Owned and operated by Clemson alumni Alan Powell, and they service the upstate. They do the jobs that a lot of these bigger companies cannot get to. That's the whole reason that Alan Powell started this business from the get-go. He needed his septic tank pumped, told that no one could get out to his area for 3 weeks. So give them a call at 864-710-2211. They're on Facebook, Instagram, super reliable. Again, 864-710-2211. When the dump's funky, call Pump Monkey. Okay.
Twitter polls.
All right, our Twitter poll of the week. This week, the question was, what will Clemson's record be the second half of the season? Tigers 4-2 through the first half of the season. The options obviously were 6-0, 5-1, 4-2. Fourth option was other, and we asked people if they selected other to comment. It was a very close poll. Before we get into the actual results, I'll give you some of the Twitter listener responses. Rev Dodd says, unbeaten until proven otherwise. Logical Sports Fan says, this is interestingly very evenly split, and it was like that pretty much the whole time that the poll was running. Walk-On Fan said, could easily be losses to Miami, UNC, Notre Dame, and toss-ups with NC State, Georgia Tech, and South Carolina. Tubbo said, not good, unfortunately. So Tubbo must have been one of the few folks who selected other. Before I reveal the results, Matthew, where were you leaning with this poll?
I'm sticking with my pessimists over here and Walk-On Fan and Tubbo or Tuvo. I really agree with what Walk-On Fan said here. I wish I had his name, but could easily be losses to Miami, UNC, Notre Dame, NC State, Georgia Tech, and South Carolina are toss-ups at this point, and I still agree with that. I would have voted for other and said maybe 2 and 4 is what I'm comfortable with saying, because from where we've been at in the season, we haven't seen the strides that you'd expect to see so far, And when we thought we were getting that, we had a setback game against Wake Forest. So I'm not feeling very confident for the rest of the season. I'm sure there will be improvements, but I'm expecting very minimal improvements from the team for the rest of the year. I might have mentioned this previously on an episode, but my dad has said that he's completely taken all expectations away from Clemson football for the season. He does not expect us to win another game or to perform well or play good football at all. So that way, if he goes into the game and that happens, he's not surprised. But if he goes and we do well, then it's a happy surprise. So I'm going with that philosophy for the rest of the year.
To the point of walk-on fan here, could easily lose to Miami, UNC, Notre Dame, and toss-ups with State, Georgia Tech, and South Carolina. If you play like you did against Wake Forest, you are definitely going to lose to Miami, UNC, and Notre Dame. If you play like you did against Florida State, you can beat Miami, UNC, and Notre Dame. The problem with that is the performance against Wake Forest has left a sour taste in a lot of people's mouth for 2 weeks. You didn't have a chance to redeem yourself this past week with a bye week. So, similar to you, maybe not for the entire season, but heading into this matchup with Miami, I don't have any expectations because I could see it going either way. I could see Clemson getting blown out. I could see Clemson losing a tight game. I could see Clemson winning a tight game. I also could see them winning by 10. So
I could see Clemson blowing out Miami, honestly.
Yeah, and we'll get into that a little bit later, but there has been a handful of times where that has happened. But I think 5-1 is my hope. I think more of 4-2, finishing the season 8-4, which would be the worst regular season record, and I don't know how long it would end the streak of 10-win seasons. But enough of us. The fans that voted, the other category, which would imply 3-3 or worse, was 5%, and then 4-2, 29%, 5-1, 30%, and 6-0, 36%. So we have a lot of optimism in this poll. A lot more optimism than this podcast.
Yeah, I will say I've heard this before when people are talking about like national polling statistics as when it comes to like politics and stuff, is that you could get 30% of Americans to agree on anything really. Like even the most wild takes, like the most far right leaning opinion or the most far left leaning opinion, like you will get 30% of people to agree with it. So 30% isn't like, I feel like you still have the what is it called, the outliers in that 30%.
Yeah, but I mean, like just the combination of 6-0 and 5-1, that's 66%.
Yeah,
there, and then 4-2. So I mean, I don't know. I like these people's optimism, and I hope this does come true. So only time will tell. We got some big matchups coming up, as we mentioned, with Miami, UNC, Notre Dame. You want to redeem that loss to South Carolina last season. So this is definitely going to be a tough stretch of football for the Tigers.
definitely.
Fact or fiction?
All right, fact or fiction. Top to bottom, the ACC is a better football conference than the SEC right now.
I know we talked about the ACC improvement, and we've talked about this season with the SEC and how it has been down in comparison to previous years. I think the ACC has taken a step forward and has improved. However, I don't know that they're better than the SEC this season. So I'm going to say fiction.
Okay, I'm also going to say fiction. The SEC is down this year. Like, even their best teams like Georgia and Alabama are struggling early in the season. And I think the ACC is up because we have a lot of teams kind of fighting for top 25 rankings and kind of all making a case for national relevancy. But then you have to look at the bottom 6 teams of the ACC, and they're all battling very hard to be the worst team in the league, which, I mean, you could probably make a case for all 6 of the bottom 6 to be the worst team in the ACC. So I think maybe our top half versus the SEC top half is competitive, but bottom halves, I don't think we have a chance.
Yeah, I agree. Fact or fiction, Iowa finishes the season 11-1, and plays for a Big Ten championship despite not being able to complete a forward pass. I will also throw out this. I was on their website today. They have the Big Ten championship listed on their schedule on the official Iowa football website currently.
I mean, that's pretty optimistic, I guess, for Iowa, but I'm going fiction here again. I think Iowa loses multiple games for the remainder of the season. It's going to get tough on their schedule coming up, so I'm saying fiction, but it is funny to think about. I mean, it takes you back to a day where before me or Drew was alive, when most teams weren't throwing forward passes and winning conference championships.
Yeah.
I guess the last team I can think of, the last team I can think of that did that is maybe Georgia Tech in 2009, but that one got vacated because of academic violations. But
yeah, I just get a kick out of there. I mean, the one good team they played, Penn State, they've gotten absolutely obliterated in, but they have found a way to win games without an offense. I think it's the offensive coordinator, is in his contract that if Iowa does not average 25 points a game, he will be let go this season. And I didn't tend to disagree with you. Their schedule sets up nicely. All the games that are left on their schedule are winnable games for Iowa, and I just think it would be absolutely hilarious for Iowa to go to the Big Ten championship, play a team like Penn State again, or Ohio State or Michigan, and get absolutely obliterated, but make the conference championship, and then your coordinator gets fired after going 11-1.
Yeah,
so I'm going to say fact because I just want this whole scenario to play out.
I think it would be funny too, but I don't really like that. I mean, I guess it makes sense in the offensive coordinator's contract, but if you're winning games, I don't see why scoring more points matters, because scoring more points just puts your defense in a position to give up more points, because if you're scoring more, the other team has the ball more. So I don't really like that. It kind of Iowa plays NFL football, and I'm trying to think of a team off the top of my head right now that has a horrible offense in the NFL, but they're winning games and just staying in. Like, even the Cardinals beat the Cowboys last week or 2 weeks ago, and I'm sorry to bring that up, but like, they're not a world beater offense.
Just that note made me absolutely furious after the way that different loss, the way that the Dallas Cowboys got beat by San Francisco last week, and then San Francisco turns around and gets beat the way they did this week. I digress. But on the note of Iowa, I do want to this out there. I'm trying to get it to load. I can't remember the exact number, but this week Iowa plays Minnesota. Both teams known for their electric offense. What you say the point total is?
It has to be less than 45.
31.5.
Jeez. I don't think I've ever seen one that low.
1.5 points. 31.5 points. No, yeah, I heard that today on a podcast, and I was like, that is going to be an absolute miserable game to watch.
Fact or fiction, Clemson fans are the majority in Hard Rock Stadium on Saturday.
I know that Miami is not known for packing stadiums. However, there are a lot of Clemson fans in Southern Florida. I'm going to say a lot of Clemson fans. It will be hard to tell who is who. The gear everyone will be wearing, but I'm going to say fiction.
Okay, yeah, I'm actually going to go fact here, or else I would have gone 3 straight fictions today, but I think it shouldn't be a surprise. Miami has one of the biggest fan bases nationally in college football. Like, you could go to almost anywhere, any state, and there'll be a Miami Hurricanes fan there, but nobody goes to their games. So it's kind of like UCLA. Like, UCLA is a huge university and lots of talent and stuff on their team, but nobody goes to the games.
Yeah. All right, it's time for our Pick'em contest.
Weekly picks.
All right, so week 7 was a good week for both Matthew and I. We both finished the week with 3 points, only missed on one game. Ironically, both of us missed on our underdog. That brings the season total: Matthew 14, myself 13.
So yeah, it was a good week. Finally, I think last week I mentioned the trend that I want to start going back upwards, because I started on a perfect trend and then started slowly going down until I got to, I might have had a week with 0, right? And then I've started my slow climb back up. So now we're back to 3-1. Expect a perfect week from me this week, guys. Put your money on every pick that I make this week, because the trends say it's going to happen. But I did hit on favorite pick. I picked UNC 3.5 at Miami. I believe they ended up winning by multiple scores, even though it was a little closer than some might have thought. But it was a pretty good game overall.
Yeah, no errors with fumbles and taking knees at the end of that game for Miami. But my favorite also hit. I had Texas A&M at Tennessee. Tennessee 3-point favorite there. And as I mentioned earlier, both Matthew and I's underdog didn't hit. I had Auburn plus 11 in Baton Rouge. And to be quite honest, I never even looked at that score. I don't even know how that game ended.
Yeah, I checked it because I did the scoreboard, like keeping tally of our picks. It's honestly makes watching college football a lot more fun on Saturdays, having these picks to go back to. So I'll usually keep our show notes up on a screen, so as the games happen, I can keep score on them. But I don't remember exactly what happened. I'm pretty sure LSU blew them out, like, really bad. But I also missed my underdog pick. We already kind of talked about it on this episode. I picked Washington, or Oregon at Washington. Oregon was plus 2.5 and couldn't get the job done. It was a close game, but home field advantage really reigned supreme. I don't know if you got to watch much of Game Day, Drew. Kind of on a tangent, but Joel McHale was the guest picker for Washington. Yeah. he came out like dressed or completely full body painted, like split purple and gold. It was pretty funny. I really liked him on the show, and he even like made a mention to Ken Jeong that he jinxed Duke's rest of the season by coming on the show. Because they were in, I don't know if you ever watched Community, Drew, but they were like the big stars of Community.
While you're on the topic of College Game Day, did you catch the moment where Desmond Howard started the big Penix energy chant?
No.
we had it on in the background. We weren't really watching. We were just kind of hanging around, and then all of a sudden, like, he got quiet in the room, and you could faintly just hear him, big Penix energy, big Penix energy. And Emily goes, "Oh my gosh, is he saying penis?" And I looked at her, and I couldn't quite tell, and I wasn't paying attention to realize they were just talking about Penix. And I looked at her, I was like, I cannot wait to get on Twitter in literally 30 seconds, because this is all everybody's going to be talking about.
That's pretty funny. I didn't see that part. But yeah, getting back onto topic, moving on to over, I believe, or I picked U of SC against Florida. I think Florida traveled to Columbia. I think last week I had like I had like all of my home and away teams wrong last week. My dad texted and pointed it out to me, but Florida at South Carolina, that was plus or minus 51. I think that hit in the third quarter, so not really in any jeopardy there.
For my over, I had UCLA and Oregon State. Very similar. Did not watch that game, so I'm glad it hit. Don't know what the total ended up being.
Yeah, I kept up with that one. I think it ended up being pretty close to 54, maybe like low 60s, but I was watching that one because I really wanted to see DJ play, and he played pretty well in this game. He's getting a good groove going. I'm feeling very happy for where DJ is at now. But lastly, for under last week, I picked Syracuse at Florida State. That was plus or minus 56.5. I can't tell you the score off the top of my head, but it was less than that.
Yep. And then I also had Syracuse at Florida State. I watched a little bit of that game. Then I got the ESPN notification for that noon slate that Alabama was just up 3 with Arkansas towards the latter part of the fourth quarter. So I flipped it over to watch the end of that game, the Florida State-Syracuse game.
Yeah.
But let's get into our pick for this week.
So for this week, I'm going with my favorite, a bit of a surprise, but I'm going Clemson at Miami. They're a 4-point favorite right now. We'll talk about it a little bit more later, but I mean, we kind of already mentioned it, that we could both see this game going close game to Clemson, blowout for Clemson, blowout for Miami, close game for Miami. Could really go either way. I'm just kind of shooting in the dark for this one. It's a hopeful pick.
Kind of surprised after our conversation earlier that you're taking Clemson here. I'm headed to the SEC with my pick. Ole Miss is a 6.5-point favorite at Auburn. I think if this game was not in Auburn, the spread would be a little bit higher. Auburn really played Georgia tough at home there on the Plains when they played them, but I think Ole Miss is going to win by 10 points plus.
Yeah, probably. Also, moving to underdog, I'm going with Pitt at Wake Forest. Pitt is a 1.5-point underdog. Wait, I might have mentioned that earlier in the episode about. No, sorry, I thought I had mentioned Pitt and Wake Forest earlier, but I was talking about Wake Forest and Virginia Tech from this previous week. But this is another bottom of the barrel ACC matchup. Pitt's coming off a big win, and I could see him making that one close and winning off of the momentum with the Louisville win.
Yeah, I like that. I like that spread there. That's surprises that close 1.5 points there. It might even get down to a pick 'em before kickoff.
Yeah.
I also am staying in the ACC with my pick. Duke at Florida State. They're a 13.5-point favorite. It seems like Duke's quarterback is going to be available for this game, but we will see. I don't know if they play the way that they have been, and Florida State plays the way that they have been in a couple games, like Clemson and Boston College. I think that Duke can keep this game close.
Yeah, I agree, and that's why for my over, I'm going Duke at Florida State. That's at plus or minus 49 right now, and I think that's a little low. I feel I could see both of these, especially if Riley Leonard is involved in the Duke offense this week. I could see both of those offenses going for big, at least 30 each.
I am going back to the SEC for my over pick. Tennessee versus Alabama, over under at 48.5. It seems like when these two teams get together, there are a lot of points. So I am going with 48.5, the over.
Mm-hmm. And lastly, for this week, my under pick, I'm going with Michigan and Michigan State. That's at Michigan State plus or minus 48. That's a pretty low number for over-unders in college football, but neither of these offenses are amazing. Michigan has gotten a little bit better as the season's gone on, but I don't think their offense is putting up as much points as how dominant they've been, might imply.
Yeah. I am going Army at LSU under 58 points. LSU is a big favorite in this game, and I think most of those points are going to come from them. The Army probably going to struggle to get some points on the board.
Yeah, that makes me feel a little better because looking over my picks, having them all listed out, as I went with 3 ACC conference games, and you went with 3 SEC games, not all conference games, but 2 of them being conference games. So I feel a little bit better about this week. So put your money on my picks because trends are showing that they're going to be all right.
This is the week people finally decide to take your gambling advice, and
I'm going 0-4.
this is the week. But hey, hope everyone does well, whether you take our advice or not. We are not professionals. All right, it's time to preview the Clemson-Miami game. The Tigers are coming off of a bye, starting the second half of the season, as we've discussed. Overall, Clemson leads the series 6-7. As the road team, Clemson leads the series 4-3. Last time these two teams met was last season on November 19th. The Tigers win 40-10. It seems like we go through these spells where we don't play Miami, and now 3 years in a row, I believe, or 3 out of the last 4 years, because I believe that was 2020 that we played them in the rain at home. But a lot of matchups with Miami. The streak currently is set at 4. Tigers have won 4 consecutive against the Hurricanes. The last time that Miami defeated Clemson at home was not any time in recent history. Back in 1956 was the last time Clemson lost to the Hurricanes down in Miami. Clemson's entering the game having outscored the Hurricanes by a score of 178-30 over the team's last 4 contests. The Tigers are attempting to add its 35th road win since 2015. That is the most wins by any program in the nation during that span. Quarterback Cade Klubnik is entering the game having thrown 151 consecutive passes without an interception.
Yeah, I was wondering, has he thrown an interception since that really bad one against Florida Atlantic? He might have had one more after that. But I'm thinking that if that one is the last one, that's a pretty good one to learn your lesson from.
Yeah. On the note of consecutive passes, he's at 151. He's 31 points or 31 passes shy of entering the top 3 of Clemson history. Trevor Lawrence is in 3rd place with going 182 passes without interception. Taj Boyd went 187. And then Trevor Lawrence on the top of the list for a second time with 366 passes interception in the 2019 season. November 16th, this is a little nugget about between Clemson and Miami. This was the last time that Miami beat Clemson in Miami. Vice President at the time, Richard Nixon, was in attendance for Clemson's game against Miami in the Orange Bowl. He was surrounded by security, as vice presidents are, and just as kickoff was starting, Clemson, like they do, fires that cannon and freaked out the Secret Service surrounding Richard Nixon there at the game.
That's a really funny story that I've never heard of before. Like, how did I not know that Richard Nixon has been to a Clemson game before?
Thought everyone knew that, just like Clemson played a game in Japan. But on this day, the game will be played on October 21st. On October 21st, 2006, I think it's well noted that this was probably my favorite game ever as a fan for many reasons. But Clemson beat number 13 Georgia Tech 31-7 in Death Valley. The Tigers were ranked 12th in the nation at the time. It was the first battle of top 25 teams in Death Valley in 14 years. This game was all about James Davis and C.J. Spiller. James Davis had 216 yards, C.J. Spiller 116 on the ground to lead Clemson with 321-yard rushing performance. It was the first time in history that Clemson had a 200-yard rusher and a 100-yard rusher in the same game. And Spiller scored on a 50-yard run and a 50-yard reception, the first player in Tiger history to have that under his belt as well. So that was a big day, October 21st, 2006. One of my favorites.
Yeah, let's hope we can keep that momentum going on this date. But this is also one of my favorite games I've ever been to. It's top 5 at least, like easy top 5. I think we've definitely talked about it on the podcast before, so we won't bore your ears. But just thinking of that one CJ Spiller reception that you're talking about, that was 50 plus yards where he sidesteps to Georgia Tech defenders. It's some of the best athleticism from a Clemson player I've ever seen. The coming out, warming up in orange on purple, and then running down the hill, showing up at the top of the hill in all purple uniforms for the first time ever, I think. Get College Game Day was there. Clemson was number 12. Georgia Tech was number 13. Georgia Tech had our number many years before that. What a great time that was. And I remember specifically, I've actually mentioned this to somebody recently, but at this game, this might have been the start of this like couple year feud, but there was 2 or 3 years in a row where Clemson would play Georgia Tech, and on the sideline, the Clemson Tiger mascot and the Yellow Jacket mascot would get into physical brawls on the sideline, unplanned, uncoordinated. And it happened 2 or 3 years in a row. I don't know if
I remember that.
I think this was the first game that it happened at. I think it happened in 2006 at this game, and then it definitely happened at Georgia Tech in 2007. So I think a couple interesting tidbits.
I have to look that up on YouTube. I don't remember that. Probably around the same time, because that was 2006. I was in high school at the time. Around that same time, I remember going into a high school game and our mascot getting in a fight with the other team's mascot, and it ended with the police out there on the field with both mascots in handcuffs.
That's so funny.
I'll have to look that up. But overall, what are we thinking? What are your thoughts heading into this matchup down at Coral Gables?
So, I know I picked Clemson to win, but I could very easily see us losing this game. I just kind of orange shaded glasses and optimism that's making me pick Clemson here. But Miami is looking like the best, most complete team they've had in a little while. And Clemson is the worst that we've been in 10 plus years. So it's going to be an interesting matchup. It's just going to depend on which coaching staff makes the least amount of mistakes, because both of these coaching staffs are prime for making mistakes in very important situations.
You mentioned that this is Clemson's worst team in 10 years or so. It does not help that this 2 or 3 year span where Clemson's kind of down in comparison to the previous 5 years is also the season where the ACC takes a step forward and is tougher competition, like you see with the Dukes of the ACC and that sort of thing. I'm going in this game with no expectations. I'm preparing myself for a loss, and I'm hoping for a win. I just can't get that Wake Forest game out of my head. It's been just sitting there cooking up for the last 2 weeks. So I'm looking forward to hopefully being pleasantly surprised. But I don't know. We'll see. Drew in his recliner at home. I go into games and watching them live in person. I don't really get nervous. I really enjoy it, that kind of thing. But when I watch a game that could potentially be close from my couch, I always am just stressed. I'm like sitting on the edge of my seat, not relaxed at all.
I agree with that too. I don't know what it is about being in Death Valley or being surrounded by a bunch of Clemson fans, but there's just something that takes away that stress a little bit. And not to say that it doesn't get high blood pressure moments in Death Valley, but when you're watching it at home, and maybe it's that you feel like you have less control of it because you're not there. Not even though we don't bring our controllers into the stadium anyway. But yeah, I don't know. I get what you're saying. I agree with that a lot. Sitting at home and watching a game that's going to be close is nerve-wracking. I almost get that, like, I don't know how to describe it. It's like a feeling of like anticipation, like antsiness almost.
Yeah. One thing that I'll say benefits Clemson or favors Clemson, Miami's quarterback Tyler Van Dyke has a right leg injury. They expect him to play, but I think he's going to end up being more of a pocket passer, which with Clemson's front seven, that should play into Wes Goodwin's hand. So something to look out for there.
And how good our secondary has been this year. I'm not aware of any Miami receivers that are really going to pose us like huge problems, like Johnny Wilson from Florida State and Keon Coleman. I'm not that familiar with Miami's roster, so I could be misspeaking by saying that, but I think that plays into our strengths if Tyler Van Dyke is hurt, because it'll be a lot easier to contain him from scrambling, because that's a very dangerous thing that he does. And if we're pretty good matched up in the secondary, I think we match up with any team in the country really in the secondary. So I think that works out for Clemson.
Yeah, absolutely. So do you have a score prediction for this one?
Yeah, I did pick Clemson -4 in our pick'em contest, so sticking with that, I'm going 28-21 Clemson by a touchdown. I think it's not going to be that high scoring, kind of like, I guess some of our previous matchups with Miami have been blowouts, essentially, and Clemson's just scoring at will almost. I don't think it's going to be like that. Our offense is not that talented, and I think Miami's going to put up some points because we're going to put them in situations to put up some points on us. But I think Clemson gets it done in the late moments. Both coaches are not amazing game managers and time management people. So it could be very interesting in the last 2 minutes of this game.
I am similar with Clemson's score, going a little bit lower. I think Wes Goodwin and the defense figure out how to contain this team. I'm going with Clemson 24-10. So I know that spreads at 4. But just as good as this defense has been, I don't see Miami putting up that many points. So bonus pick here. Take Clemson, Miami under whatever the under is. I can't even remember what it is now, but I know it's got to be more than what I'm picking here, 34.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I could probably pull it up here in a second. Never mind. I tried to Control F, find Clemson on this page, and it didn't show up, so skip that. Forget I said that.
All right, well, that is the episode. Thank you for joining us this week. Join us next week as we review the Miami game and preview the upcoming NC State game. And I'm going to reach out to Ryan Cantor so we have a guest for next week. So that one's on me. But as always, follow us on Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, whatever. We're on there. So give us a follow, and we'll see you next week. Peace.
Peace. Okay, Drew, I have a question for you. It's a trivia question.
All right.
This came out on Instagram today. I don't think you saw it, so that's why I'm going to ask you. Out of the 53 most frequented college town Chipotles, where does Clemson rank within that top 53?
Is it like per capita, or is it like just straight visits?
I think it's straight. I think it's just straight business, because if it were percentage of students, I think Clemson's a lot higher. I guess I'm kind of giving away the answer a little bit.
Well, I was originally leaning towards a higher number just because of Clemson being such a small town and the dining options are a little bit more limited maybe than other Power 5 areas, because Clemson does have the lowest population of any Power 5 team. But I'm going to say 53rd.
No, that's actually really close, though. 51st.
51st?
Yeah.
Who is 52 and 53?
52 is Norman, Oklahoma, on Asp Avenue. There might be multiple in Norman. And Oxford, Mississippi on Jackson Avenue. is number 53, but Clemson is number 51. Like you said, I expected if this was like percentage of Clemson students that eat Chipotle once a week, or like school students that eat Chipotle once a week, we're close to the top. I've never been in that Chipotle and it be dead before.
You mean Chipotle?
Yeah, Chipotle. I did actually eat.
Did they take that sign down?
Yeah, it was only for like a week that promotion was going on, but I did actually one time eat across from Eric Backich at that Chipotle on a lunch break.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. And I think like the very next week I saw a football player and they're like a good football player, but I can't remember who it is at this time, so we can just leave it there.
Oh, my brother Devin, he had an awkward moment at that Chipotle. I can't remember what was it? It was one of those very few moments where that Chipotle is dead. With it being upstairs, you can kind of see down to the street level or whatever. And we're up there, and Devin sees this guy that we know from back home, but they don't really know each other all that well. And so like Devin walks out there and is like, "Oh, what's up, Carl?" And Carl like looks up and goes, "Oh, hey, Devin." And then like neither of them had any follow up or anything else to say. And it was just like really awkward. And Devin just quietly turned around and just walked back into the Chipotle.
That sounds about right.
Yeah.